Next, we're going to get into how to navigate around our pivot tables. So our first question here, 2A, says, what country has the most revenue? So I'm going to go back to our data set, and we have the whole data highlighted, and I'm going to go to the Insert ribbon and then Pivot Table. And again, I'm going to move this to an existing worksheet so we can place it right under our prompt. I'll click on the button next to the location option, navigate to section 2, navigating, and put this in the cell right below our problem. I'll click enter and then hit OK. And now we have our pivot table. To find out the answer to our question, I'm going to populate the fields with the country and revenue. So I'll click the box for country, and you can see that it auto-populates in our row field. And next, I'll take revenue and check that box, and we can see in our value section that we have the sum of revenue. You'll notice at this point that it was very easy for us to find the two variables that we're working with in this problem. A leading practice is to create detailed column names before starting with the pivot table so that we can clearly identify our variables rather than having the default column names of 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. To find out in our pivot table which country had the most revenue, we could scroll through and see if we could find out ourselves, but that would be time consuming. So let's use a tool of the pivot table. I'm going to click the box next to row labels, and you'll see 3 sort options. There's 2 simple sort options, sort A to Z and sort Z to A, and those will give you a basic alphabetical sort. In this case, we want to sort by revenue, so I'm going to click more sort options. Here again, you can see ascending and descending, and since we're trying to find the most revenue, I'll click descending, so the most revenue is at the top. And I will change this from country to sum of revenue so we have a numerical sort rather than an alphabetical one. And then I'll click OK. And we can see that France is at the top with $3,016 of revenue. Next, try problem 2B, where it asks, what are the top 5 countries by revenue? This next question we'll do together. Question 2C asks, who is the top distributor in Panama by revenue? So the value we're looking at is revenue, and the 2 other variables we're looking at are distributors and countries. To answer this question again, we're going to use our friendly tool, the pivot table. So I'm going to go through the steps again to insert our pivot table. I'll go to the Dataset tab, and all of our data is highlighted. I'll hit Insert in the ribbon and click on Pivot Table. Again, I will change our location to the existing worksheet and move this over to under our problem that we're working on, 2C. And then I'll click OK. So now we have our pivot table to begin solving our problem. At this point, if you didn't want to go through all the steps to create a brand new pivot table, you can definitely just copy and paste one that you've already used as long as the same data is being used. So now let's figure out who is the top distributor in Panama by revenue. So again, our 3 variables are distributors, countries, and revenue. So let's start with distributor name. I'm going to click the box, and you can see it came down to our rows section. And next, let's think about the values. So the value we want to look at is revenue. So I'll click on revenue, and again, we have the sum of revenues in our values section. This next part is where it can get a little more tricky. So at this point, we're going to use the filter function in our pivot table field menu. So I'm going to click on country, and you can see that it automatically went down to the rows section. So you can easily fix that just by dragging it up to filters. And now we have a filter at the top of our pivot table that allows us to pick which country in particular we want to look at. So I'm going to click the little dialog box next to all, since we are currently looking at all countries' distributors. I'll scroll down to Panama, click on that, and then click OK. And now we can see that we have 3 distributors from Panama. In this scenario, we only have 3 distributors, so it's pretty easy to go through and see which has the highest revenue. But if we had a longer list, it might be time consuming and less efficient to do that. So we can use the sort function that we did in a previous example. I'll click on the dialog box next to row labels, and since we don't want a basic A to Z or Z to A sort, I will go to more sort options. And here, since we want the highest amount of revenue on top, I'll click descending and change our sort function to sum of revenue and click OK. So now we have the data sorted with the individual with the most revenue up top, and that is Maxine. This next question, 2D, is for you to solve. Who is the top distributor of DataFast Stain Remover 200 milliliters by unit sold? Remember to keep the relevant variables in mind while you're making your pivot table, and also try using the filter function or sort feature if you think that'll help you solve the problem efficiently. 2E is the last example we'll work together in this section. What are the 4 products that sold the most units? To solve this, we'll create a pivot table again using the same steps as before. We'll go into Dataset. The whole dataset is already highlighted, so I'll go up to Insert and then Pivot Table. Again, I'll move this to the worksheet that we're working on the problem. Click the cell where I'd like the pivot table, hit Enter, and then looks good, so I'll hit OK. For this question, our relevant variables are products and units sold. So I'm going to take product and put it in our rows, and then I'll take quantity, which represents the unit sold, and that will default as the sum of quantity in our values field. I'm going to go through the same process as we did in our previous examples to move the highest quantities to the top and sort by that. I'll click the button next to row labels and go to more sort options, and then I'll click descending and change this to sum of quantity. And you'll see the summary down here is a quick little way to check to make sure you're doing what you would like to do. It says sort product by sum of quantity in descending order. So I'll hit OK, and we can see the top 4 products easily shown in our pivot table. The next 3 problems, 2F, 2G, and 2H, are for you to try. Keep in mind all of the things we went through together, and also remember how beneficial these tools could be in a real-life setting if you have a large data set and problems to solve.